5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Indie Wrestling Experience. I am Bob Richards. I am your host, and here we talk about all things related to the Indie Wrestling Experience. We got a big show today. Well, lots of stuff to talk about. I don't know how long the show is going to be because I don't have any guests and I don't have a co-host this week, so it's just me. So we're going to talk wrestling from the past week. We're going to talk House of Glory, Watch the Throne. We are going to talk IWC Reloaded 11. And we're going to talk a little bit about GCW, the people versus GCW. We're going to talk about Ali Catch's injury. We're going to talk about the new GCW World Champion. But first, we're going to start with Brandon Kirk. For those of you who are GCW fans, for those of you who are East Coast Deathmatch fans, you certainly know who Brandon Kirk is. Some of you who aren't into either one of those scenes may not. But Brandon Kirk has been performing for, it said in the statement that I'm about to read to you, for 13 years. I first saw Brandon at Standalone Wrestling in a street fight against Homicide. And I think they called that a street fight just because it was a family show. They didn't really go too deep into the deathmatch stuff, but I bet Brandon Kirk versus Homicide in a different environment would have been a bloody mess, which I would have been there for completely. But I did see Brandon Kirk versus Homicide. I also saw Brandon Kirk versus Danny D'Amato at ICW No Holds Barred a year and change ago. Those matches were both brutal. They were both fantastic. Brandon Kirk is a consummate performer. A lot of you folks on the East Coast have seen him with his wife, Casey Catal. They are the death match couple, the death match way before Cardona and Chelsea Green. Brandon Kirk and Casey Catal or Casey Kirk have been tearing up the death match scene for years. Well, this week, Brandon Kirk put out a statement, and the statement reads as follows. January 19th, 2025, in a ladder match for the GCW Ultraviolent Championship at the Hammerstein Ballroom, win or lose will be my final match. I started this journey in professional wrestling almost 13 years ago. In that time, I've been fortunate enough to travel the world, share the ring with some of the best wrestlers on the planet, meet some incredible people, and do things that I never thought would even be possible. I've given absolutely everything I had to a business that never owed me anything in return, but has awarded me more than I could have ever imagined. At this point in time, I'm ready to move on and move forward and focus on the things that are most important to me. My whole career, it was always, quote, wrestling over everything. And somewhere along the way, I just lost myself. I'm ready to focus on me, my wife, my family, my job, and my future. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to anyone who has ever taken a chance on me, believed in me, cheered for me, booed me, and supported me. I am forever grateful. Well, as someone who has cheered for and supported and believed in you, Brandon Kirk, I can say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you've done for professional wrestling. The match that Brandon referenced was an ultra-violent championship match that took place at GCW this weekend. A match in which Matt Tremont actually walked away, the new GCW, the new GCW Extreme / Ultra-Violent champion. The match was Matt Tremont versus Maki Ito, who was the Ultra-Violent champion. Brandon Kirk versus Cyclope versus Dr. Redacted versus Drew Parker versus John Wayne Murdoch versus Matthew Justice versus Rina Yamashita. Took 15 minutes and 55 seconds. Matt Tremont is your new GCW Extreme Ultraviolent champion, and Brandon Kirk's career is over. Now, while we're talking about GCW, I have never really gotten into GCW. That's not a knock on GCW because I don't really know the product that well. It's just one of the last promotions that I've gotten really. It's one of the last promotions. It will be one of the last promotions that I get familiar with It's just worked out that way. So I've never really, I don't think I've ever seen a full GCW show yet. And this one certainly would not be any different because as soon as I turned on as soon as I clicked on the show and saw a 6 hour runtime, I was like, holy crap, I watched so much wrestling in a week already. I cannot make it through 6 hours of GCW today. So I only watched the championship match, which I'll get to in a minute, between Effy and GCW champion Mance Warner. But I did hear that earlier in the evening, there was a number one contender match for the GCW Championship between Effy and Ali Catch. During that match, Ali Catch apparently broke her leg in two places on a tope suicida. There is a GoFundMe that has been set up for her. When I clicked to start recording this show, it looks like they've already raised about $32,000, but more will help. Find the GoFundMe. Wrestling fans, if you have seen Alley Catch, if you've supported Alley Catch over the years, support her now. Donate whatever you can, what little or as much as you can, to help Alley Catch with her injury and her medical bills. Now, like I said, I didn't watch all of GCW. I didn't watch all of the show, but I turned it on. I went all the way to the end, and as I turned it on, Jimmy Lloyd was beating Matt Cardona. And when I looked at the results, it seemed like that was a pretty short match. And Cardona had just had like two other short matches before it. Honestly, I don't know the setup on that. I was doing a bunch of other research today for this show, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to go back and watch the rest of that show because it's just packed. It might take me a couple of attempts. I might have to do it in a few sittings. But I'm going to go back and watch that show because it looked like a really good one. Of course, the thing that drew my attention to the show was the championship match between Effy and Mance Warner. These two have had a feud that has gone on for the better part of a year. This felt like the culmination. Like I said, I'm not even a GCW regular watcher, but I could feel the energy in the arena. And then, of course, moments later, as Effy is making his entrance, fans are already chanting "New Champ." So that that told me at least that the mood in the arena, the mood in the venue between all of the GCW fans was, we are crowning a new champion tonight, and that is exactly what would end up happening. For those of you, the commentators made a point to say that Mance Warner had taken a screwdriver at a past event to bludgeon Effy and his friends. This was now a blood feud. Mance had been champion for 233 days after defeating Joey Janela at Cage of Survival 3 in June. Since then, Mance had defeated the likes of Masha Slamovich, Homicide, Cyclope, Danhausen, Myron Reed, and so many others. For those of you who don't know, GCW has events all the time. They have more events than most any other indie promotion I can think of. So Mance was not sitting on that belt. He was defending it constantly and did a great job. Thank you to Mance for a great title reign. And we look forward to seeing what Mance is going to do next. But in this match, it was Effy. He was on fire early. He had all the energy. He had the crowd behind him. At one point, he went outside and threw a bunch of chairs in. That started the violence in the match. Effy crotched Mance on one of the chairs that he sat upright and then just started pummeling him in the back with another. Effy climbed to the top, but he went for a cannonball with Mance sitting in one of the chairs. Mance moved, and that's when Mance took control of the match and slowed things down. He would Uranagi Effy onto one of those upright chairs and then set up like five more to form a chair platform. However, Effy would reverse him with a TKO through the chairs and then a tombstone through the only chair that was left standing after the TKO. Somehow that did not put Mance Warner away, and we had a ton of action still to go. Moments later, Effy gets a near fall when he reverses a charging Mance and sends him through a wooden door. Later, Mance tries to pile drive Effy from the apron through the table at ringside. He does the pile driver, but the table does not break. We all thought Effy was dead. It took forever for Effy just to get back into the ring, and when it looked like he was completely knocked out. But back in the ring, Mance set up a door, made like a door bridge, I guess, across some of the chairs, and then DDT'd Effy through it from the top rope. That only got a 2 count as well. Effy rolls outside the ring, and even though there are not normally countouts in GCW, Mance Warner was looking for the cheap win and started demanding that the referee count Effy out. Effy made it in just before the count reached 10. Then Mance threw him back out and told the referee to count him out again. Effy gets back in a third time. Mance signals for the knee and hits the knee, but Effy kicks out. At this point, Effy hawks up. He's got all the energy. He just kicked out of that big Mance knee. But as Effy's hawking up, Mance grabs the screwdriver. Mance charges at him, takes a swing. Effy ducks and hits a spear off the ropes, then grabs the screwdriver and hits Mance in the forehead. He sets up a door in the corner, then power bombs Mance through it. Somehow that doesn't end the match. So Effy grabs the screwdriver again and just starts pummeling Mance in the back of the head with it. Then he charged with the leg lariat he calls the sack rider, but Mance escaped, or Mance reversed it by throwing him off. Mance hits a DDT, then goes outside, and we're like, up the apron. Where the hell is Mance going? He goes over to where I guess a band had been performing earlier in the day, grabs their guitar, comes back, and is about to hit Effy with it when Cole Radrick shows up, grabs the guitar from Mance, then opens his jacket to reveal the brass ring, which gives him the opportunity for a title match at any time, at a time of his choosing. Cole looks at the referee. Everyone in the arena thought Cole was about to cash in that brass ring, but instead, he puts it back around his neck, hands the guitar to Effy. Effy hits Mance with the guitar. Then Effy hits the sack rider, and we have a new GCW champion. The era of Effy has begun. Congratulations to Effy. Thank you to Mance Warner for a great title reign. I am very interested to see where Effy goes from here. Effy's a guy, I think I've only seen Effy once, maybe twice. I know I saw Effy at Enjoy Wrestling at Mr. Smalls in Pittsburgh, teaming up with Alley Catch as Bussy. That was their tag team tournament. I don't know that I've seen Effy anywhere else. I would love to hear some Effy stories. People who have seen Effy, pictures, photos, whatever, wherever you've seen him, tell stories. Find us on social media, Indie Wrestling XP on Twitter, Indie Wrestling Experience on Facebook. Send us your photos. Send us your Effy stuff. When did you meet Effy? When did you see Effy? Let's talk about it. I love fan photos. Send them all. But next up, I want to talk about 2 shows that I did watch this weekend completely. That being IWC Reloaded and House of Glory Watch the Throne. IWC Reloaded. Now, IWC is the very first promotion I ever went to when I started this blog. One day I just woke up and I told my wife, I think I'm going to drive 5 hours to see a show in Pittsburgh. And the next thing I know, the blog was born. I came back, I reviewed it, I posted pictures, and I've been doing it ever since. So in that sense, I owe a debt of gratitude to IWC. But their shows, if anybody's ever seen the International Wrestling Cartel, their shows are generally out of Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh area, I guess I'll say. This show was IWC Reloaded 11, where the reset button is in control of making the matches. Maybe you could think about it like, what was that, Cyber Sunday or Taboo Tuesday, where the matches aren't decided until basically you get into the arena. The first matchup on this show, the reset button picked former tag team champion Channing Decker as the first entrant, and then the second entrant revealed his former tag team partner in the fraternity, Trent Gibson, who hasn't been in IWC for 5 or 6 years, I don't think, but they were the fraternity, and they were definitely IWC tag team champions. One of the commentators mentioned that they were one of the longest reigning tag team champions in a long time. But the fans were happy to see them. It was a great pop to start the night. The fraternity is back. In this match, the Sam Holloway tried to get involved on behalf of Barkley and Dillinger, at which point Elijah, who is formerly known as Elias in WWE, the Super Indy Champion, who had a match with Holloway later in the evening, Elijah comes down, takes care of, well, neutralizes Holloway. They fight to the back. And as we turn our attention back to the ring, the fraternity lift, I think it was Barkley up for what's like a modified Magic Killer finisher. And we have new tag team champions. The fraternity have returned, and they are champions again in ICW. Next up was a triple threat match to determine the number one contender for the Super Indy Championship, held by Elijah at this point, with a match against Holloway coming up later in the card. The reset button picked Spencer Slade, who many of you know from NWA, from MCW. Spencer Slade is a mainstay in IWC. He was at the very first IWC show I saw, and I had to assume he was the favorite in this match, with him being the most the one who flies the IWC colors more than others. He'd been there for a long time. The other two people picked by the reset button for this match were LSG and WWE ID prospect Marcus Mathers, who I've discussed on this podcast, who I've covered numerous times on my blog. I've seen Marcus Mathers many, many times. He's definitely an up and coming talent, and he would prove that here tonight, although maybe not in a way some of us fans would have liked. Early in this match, Slade was in charge and put LSG and Mathers in simultaneous ankle locks, which had me cracking up. But moments later, Slade would grab LSG and hit the air raid slam. However, Marcus Mathers, who had rolled out to the apron after escaping the ankle lock, had climbed to the top rope, and as Slade goes to make the cover on LSG after the air raid slam, Marcus Mathers flies off the top rope, hits a 450 splash on both of them. Slade rolls off the top of LSG and over to the side. Mathers covers, makes the pin, and Marcus Mathers is the number one contender for your Super Indy title. At that point, I'm thinking to myself, cool, Marcus Mathers, maybe he'll be around in IWC for a little while. That was not to be the case, but we will get to that later. Next up, a strange match picked by the reset button. There were no stakes announced for this match. It was just announced that there would be a one-on-one match chosen by the reset button. The reset button chose the Savage Gentleman, Victor Benjamin, to take on CPA. Now, I have to go back and do some research, but I don't recall CPA being much of an IWC guy in the past. I know CPA from his tag team with Laney Luck in Freelance. They are former Freelance tag team champions. But I don't remember seeing CPA this far out east before. Anyway, so CPA is the choice. The commentators are talking up Victor Benjamin. He looks like $1 million. He looks like he has just been bulking up and shredding, and he just looked cut and built, and like he was in great shape, clearly ready for a fight. And it was obvious when this match was over that it was a Victor Benjamin showcase. Benjamin just almost destroyed CPA for virtually the entire time. At one point, CPA hits the 1099, which is such a weakened version of the 619 that it's comical, which I thought was awesome. But CPA hits the 1099 and then climbs to the top rope. As he's coming off, Victor Benjamin hits the tiger knee and knocks CPA out. Victor Benjamin makes the cover, gets the win. This was clearly a showcase match for the Savage Gentleman. He will be moving up in my IWC rankings after this match because it looks to me like they're setting him up for something. Hopefully that's the Super Indy Championship or the World Championship, because I would love to see Victor Benjamin against Bill Collier or Sam Holloway or whichever one of those champions. Of course, I just gave away the next match. But the next match is the Elijah versus Sam Holloway match. Holloway is another WWE ID guy. That would be important later in this show, actually right after this match. Elijah, late in the match, would hit a knee strike for a near fall, then his spinning fisherman suplex finisher for another near fall. He then grabs a hold of Holloway, who is huge, by the way. My God, have you seen this guy? He's humongous. But Elijah gets him into what looks like a Sister Abigail, sort of an inverted DDT sort of position. At which point, Wes Barkley runs in and Derek Dillinger too. But we only see Barkley first. Barkley jumps up on the apron to distract the referee so that Dillinger can sneak in from the other side, hit Elijah in the head with the Super Indy title belt, and then sneak away as the referee turns back around and makes the cover or makes the pinfall count. We have a new Super Indy champion. It is Sam Holloway. After the match, after Elijah had slinked to the back, Marcus Mathers, well, strike that. So Holloway, Barkley, and Dillinger start beating down Elijah after the match. It's just 3-on-1, but Marcus Mathers runs down. He makes the save, chases those guys away, and as the bad guys sneak away, Mathers challenges Holloway to a match for the Super Indy title later in the evening. Now, I immediately tweeted the gif of shut up and take my money. Mathers versus Holloway is a main event in pretty much every indie promotion in the country nowadays. That's how good these guys are. But I don't know. Someone commented on Twitter, and then I started thinking about it. Like, is this just a WWE ID showcase now? Is WWE ID going to permeate all of the shows like this? Is the point going to be that these super indies need to get at least one, if not two, WWE ID talent on their show to drive people to their show, to bring people in? And if all of these promoters are constantly focused on bringing in this handful of WWE ID talent, which I think is like 15 or 20 at most right now, what about everybody else? If everybody's trying to book Mathers, if everybody's trying to book Holloway, if everybody's trying to book Zeta Steel, what about everybody else? Is everybody going to be marketing with these talent? Are we going to burn ourselves out with every indie promotion trying to book these talent? I don't know. It hasn't happened yet. It's just stuff that I start thinking about as I'm watching them put together. They bring in Mathers. He wins the match, immediately challenges for the title. The whole thing was set up to be a WWE ID showcase, which brings the thought, how good or bad is this for wrestling? Anybody who's listening, let me know on Twitter what you think. Indie Wrestling XP. I'm dying to know everybody's take on this and whether they think we're going to end up with a ton of indie shows that have WWE ID main events, at least for this foreseeable future. I hope not. One of the things that I love about indie wrestling is that I can go from place to place and see completely different people. I do not want to see the same people at every show. That would defeat the purpose for me, and it would take the wind out of my sails being a fan of indie wrestling. So maybe that's a little extreme. Maybe that is way down the road. There are lots of things to to happen still, so we'll wait and see what happens. But I'm not loving it. I'm not loving this idea of trying to attract these 15 or 20 talents above all. Before the intermission in this show, they had what's called the 16-bit challenge, which is essentially a Royal Rumble, but pinfalls and submissions are allowed. The 16-bit challenge was all decided by the reset button. So each time the reset button would announce, but that doesn't make it any different than any other Royal Rumble, with every entrant being a surprise. This particular Royal Rumble, or this particular 16-bit challenge, really didn't heat up until the end. But in the middle stages, we had Scotty 2 Hotty, and Scotty 2 Hotty appeared early. He was one of the first, maybe 5 or 6 people to be in, but he transitioned the match to the final stage of big name guys who were going to really take this match home. Derek Dillinger, Wes Barkley, Jamie Jameson, Zach Nystrom, and the Man Dime Elijah Dean. That's your big group of guys who were there at the end. After Nystrom comes in at number 16, Dillinger hits a low blow to Dean and Nystrom at the same time. Elijah sneaks in at that point and hits a guitar shot to Dillinger and eliminates him. Nystrom had eliminated Barkley moments before that. And then Nystrom goes over the top. So with Nystrom, Dillinger, Barkley, with Nystrom and Barkley headed to the back, Elijah sneaks in, hits a guitar shot to Dillinger to make up for earlier, and eliminates Dillinger himself. Now we've got Nystrom, Dillinger, and Barkley all headed to the back with Elijah. They're all brawling after everything that just took place. The referee's attention is focused on that brawl as it heads to the back. Well, at the same time, we've got Jamie Jamison and the man-dime Elijah Dean in the ring, the last two left. Dean eliminates Jamison, throws him over the top rope, but there are no refs available because they're all dealing with the brawl in the back. So Jamie Jamison slinks around ringside. He finds his sledgehammer, sneaks back into the ring as Elijah Dean is celebrating what he thinks is his big win, and hits him with the sledgehammer. And conveniently, a referee runs right back down after that, makes the count for the pin, and Jamie Jamison is your 16-bit challenge winner. The 16-bit challenge winner gains control of the reset button and also gets to pick a title match for themselves whenever they see fit. So with Jamison cheating to win the 16-bit challenge, Jock Sampson, who is 50% owner, he's the good guy owner, Justin Plummer being the evil 50% owner. And Jock comes on the screen and he says, no, that's not going to fly. You're not going to cheat to win this. The ref may not have seen it, but I did. At the next event in February, it will be Elijah Dean versus Jamie Jamison for control of the reset button. After that, we took a short intermission and came back for the Cruiserweight Championship. No, it's called the High Stakes Championship in IWC. The High Stakes Championship between Felix Cause and whoever the reset button would choose. The reset button chose Anthony Young. But before the match could start, Felix Cause told the announcer that he wants the reset button to pick the stipulation. Now, the high stakes champion in IWC, at being the high stakes champion, one of the perks is that as champion, you get to pick the stipulation before every defense. Felix Cause said, no, let the reset button do it. At which point, several very strange Pennsylvania-based matches started showing up on the screen. I remember there being a pierogi match. There were a couple others as they started scrolling by. But what the reset button landed on was a polka dance match in which you must polka dance with your opponent before you can make a pinfall. The running gag basically through the first 3/4 of this match was that Anthony Young had no idea how to do a polka. So none of his pins ever counted. He did a polka and then he would, do the cabbage patch, or he would do the, some sort of crazy dance. None of them were the polka. The referee kept saying, no, dude, that's not the polka. And the pins would never count. Young would get situated with a pinfall and the referee would just, no. You have to do a polka dance. Anthony Young, I don't know what a polka dance is. It went on and on. At the end, though, Kaz did figure out how to do a polka. He does the polka dance with Anthony Young, then hits his twisting Uranagi finisher for the win. It was a fun match. Kaz is somebody I'm going to be keeping my eye on. He's tall and long, and so he's got potential, and I'm very interested. I like Felix Kaz. I'm keeping my eye on him. After the match, Marcus D'Angelo snuck down and tried to steal the belt. As he's sneaking to the back, Sam Handeman comes out, stops him on the ramp, walks him back to the ring, where Handeman and Kaz make D'Angelo look like a fool and keep the belt. But the D'Angelo Handeman Kaz situation is something that's going to progress moving forward, I'm sure. Next up, the Women's Championship. Mila Moore defending versus the reset button's choice, Ava Everett. I've seen Ava Everett on screen before. I don't think I've ever seen her live. But Mila shows up before the reset button even picks her opponent, and she's carrying a rule book, and she's reading rules to the fans, getting heat, which is really funny. It looks like a homemade rule book. It's awesome. She tells the crowd that all champions must have time to prepare by rule, and therefore this match is invalid. She also says that by Rule 13 or some such mess, that the challenger cannot pull or even touch her hair or it's an automatic DQ. Of course, she's just getting heat with the crowd. Ava Everett comes down. They put on a decent match. Towards the end, Mila and Ava hit double hair pull face busters, which leave both women down. As they rise to their feet, they start to exchange shots. Ava Everett hits an inverted DDT for a near fall, then a cutter out of nowhere for another near fall. Everett climbs to the top, but Mila Moore catches her before she can jump off, then suplexes her down to the mat. There's an on-feet exchange of shots. Then suddenly, Mila Moore hits the facelift out of nowhere, and it's over. Mila Moore is still your IWC Women's Champion. 2 matches to go. Now it's time for Marcus Mathers and Sam Holloway to come back out after each having decent matches earlier in the night. And this one goes about 20 minutes. I mean, they do not, just because they wrestled twice in one night, does not mean there's some wonky finish to get them out of this match quick. This is a showcase. It is everything that a showcase should be. It's a match worth watching. It's probably the best. And no, it is. It's the best match of the night by far. And it's one worth watching. If you have Triller TV Plus, it's available there. I don't know where else they might post this match, but if you can see Marcus Mathers versus Sam Holloway from IWC Reloaded 11, I highly suggest you do it. Towards the end of the match, Marcus Mathers is hitting some low kicks on Holloway with some success. Then he calls for the springboard cutter. Holloway catches him in midair and then throws him down with the Uranagi to win. After the match, Holloway grabs the mic and starts talking smack. He says he's the face of the WWE ID program, which prompts Mathers to jump up and defend his spot in that program. He clotheslines Holloway over the top rope, and Holloway runs. The fans give Marcus Mathers his flowers for a great match, and it was a great match. But what I'm looking for is Holloway versus Victor Benjamin, Holloway versus Spencer Slade. Bring those matches to me. I want them, please. Now, I was sure with this final match, I was sure that Bill Collier and Justin Plummer were going to be some hijinks. At the beginning of the show, they announced Duke Davis and Gannon Jones, who are your number 1 and number 2 IWC contenders, ranked by Indie Wrestling Experience. It was announced they would not be there. I assumed there would be wonkiness, a dusty finish, or some sort of a schmoz involving Gannon and or Jones, but it was not to be. Collier struts to the ring, waits for the reset button, and then when the reset button picks Andrew Palace, who has become Justin Plummer's flunky, like Bill Collier, doing the bidding of the evil owner. Collier and Plummer are thrilled. They see Palace come down. They figure this is boom, 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 easy night. Not Palace. Plummer takes the microphone, tells Palace to lay down, but Palace refuses. Kicks out of an easy pinfall at 2. That just infuriates Bill Collier. So Collier pummels him and pummels him and pummels him. Then Barkley and Dillinger come down. They join in. They're beating Palace to death. Eventually, the referee stops the match. It didn't go very long. I'm thinking it was 5 minutes maybe. After the match, Jock Sampson appears on the video screen again. He says this kind of shenanigans will not fly, and decrees that at the next show in February, Collier will defend the title against an opponent of his choosing, and Collier will not know the opponent until he gets into the ring. And since that's just what happened with the reset button, we just did a whole show like that. It made me wonder if there was some Gannon Jones or some Duke Davis creative that maybe wasn't possible. Maybe they weren't able to come, or one of them wasn't able to come. And so they pushed this match off to the next show. We did get an Andrew Palace babyface turn, and he now will be battling Plummer and the rest of those evil dudes. But I don't know where that's going to go. Maybe that was a creative decision made on the fly. Maybe the Palace babyface turn was coming anyway. I don't know. Or maybe this is what they did. Maybe this is what they had planned out the whole time. It didn't feel like that. I mean, when you got somebody come down for a main event match and get beat in 5 minutes and just pummeled, there was no rally. There was no shine. It was all Collier. When that happens in a main event and there's no creative afterwards, no run-ins, no sudden, instant match demands or anything like that. It makes me think that there was something else going on, or there should have been something else going on that they weren't able to do. Either way, we'll never know, but I'm curious to see who this opponent is going to be for Collier at the next show in February. You guys should definitely check out IWC International Wrestling Cartel and their social media for for information on that show. The other show, so I watched a lot of wrestling this weekend, guys. I'm serious. Probably too much. I honestly was going to watch more, but I don't know how I was even going to squeeze that in. But the other match that I watched that I was really interested in watching because um, I'd never seen a show by this promotion, and that's House of Glory. The show was Watch the Throne. It took place from Chicago. They made many references. Now I know House of Glory is a mostly New York-based territory or promotion. They were in Chicago here. They made references to coming back to Chicago in May. So I don't know if how much of that expansion is. I mean, I don't know if they're going to start running shows regularly in Chicago or if they were just trying to push the second of what'll be only 2 events. I don't know, but they will be back in Chicago. So for those of you fans who have been interested in seeing House of Glory, didn't get a chance to get out to see Watch the Throne this past weekend, they will be back in May. I want to say I heard May 4th, but don't hold me to that. Check out House of Glory's social media as well. I know they are on Facebook. That's where I found them. Check out their social media for that show if you are in Chicago and you are interested. This particular show, House of Glory Watch the Throne, started out with Phumi Nkuta defeating Joe Alonzo, who many of you know from the NWA. Phumi Nkuta is a guy, I had no idea who this guy was. None. He is an MMA fighter from New Jersey. Apparently, he is undefeated, 8-0 in MMA. But I had no idea who he was. I don't follow MMA. That's not a shot at Nkuta. Because, in fact, he was super impressive in this match. Now, with him being new, 8-0 in MMA is still pretty new. He seems to be still pretty new at the wrestling game. I got to imagine that Joe Alonzo carried him through, much of this match. But what do I know? Maybe not. Before the match, Alonzo said no one in the crowd even knows who Phumi Nkuta is. I think they all did when this was over. But Nkuta grabs the microphone and he says, "I'm Turbo Booty Nkuta, and I'm going to submit you in your own scene, bitch." So, all right, now we're off and running. Let's do this. In fact, he does at the end. Alonzo powerbombed Nkuta into the crowd. When they made it back into the ring, Phumi got a near fall on a powerbomb reversal into a sunset flip, never lets go, and traps him in a cross arm breaker in an instant, and it's over. Alonzo submits almost immediately, and Phumi Nkuta wins in 9 minutes, 34 seconds. This match was fun. Phumi Nkuta is worth watching. Definitely check this guy out. And if you haven't seen Joe Alonzo's great. He's fun. Go check this match out if you can. I mean, it's the first match. I don't know if they'll post it by itself, but if you can see it on Triller, check it out because Phumi Nkuta is somebody I think you're going to be hearing his name more and more. Second match of this show was Idris Jackson, who's another guy I had not seen before, taking on Kota Hernandez, who is currently the Freelance Wrestling Legacy Champion. It was his first time in House of Glory. Again, I said I don't really know much about Idris Jackson. Towards the end of this match, Kota tries to lift Idris Jackson into a crucifix powerbomb, but Jackson had been working on his back throughout the entire match, so Kota couldn't lift him all the way in the air, allowing Jackson to escape. Jackson then slingshots Kota into the buckle, rolls him up, puts his feet on the ropes to take home the win. We'll see where this goes, whether Kota's back. Kota's another, like I said, Freelance is a Midwest promotion. They do a lot of shows in and around Chicago area, so if HOG is back, I hope Kota Hernandez is back as well. He's another guy I think you guys should check out. He's on the come up. The next match is a triple threat for the House of Glory Tag Team Championships. This match was supposed to be a one-on-one match between the champion, the Cold Blooded Killers, Jay Armani and Raheem Royal, taking on Los Desperados, which is Rez and Gringo Loco, who many of you folks know. I'm sure he is very popular with this crowd, very popular Midwest wrestler. But just before the match started, the main event, Jay Lyon and Midas Black, were added to the match. The main event were the tag team champions in HOG until the Cold-Blooded Killers took those titles from them last year. I wasn't very familiar with the champs, the Cold-Blooded Killers, but having seen them now, they are a really good team, and they're really hateable heels, just smug and cocky. Uh, Definitely what you want in a set of heel tag team champions for sure. Late in the match, there was a sunset flip by CBK, but Gringo. Well, it was. I think it was Jay Armani does the sunset flip, but then Gringo Loco rolled it back forward, so it rolled him back to where he was standing up on his feet. Just as Raheem Royal comes off the top rope, and somehow Gringo Loco catches him in midair, twists him around, and hits a sit-out power bomb as Raheem Royal is coming off the top rope. It was insane. Absolutely insane. Later, Erez hits a mission. Oh, no. Moments later, Erez does a Michinoku driver to Jay Armani, and they're pinning these guys at the same time. Erez pinning Jay Armani, Gringo Loco pinning Raheem Royal. Still only a 2 count. Moments later, Erez hits a suicide dive to CBK and Gringo, who had rolled outside and battled into the crowd. Erez goes flying into the crowd. Then Jay Lyon jumps in the ring, lets everybody know what he's about to do, and goes for a. Oh, no, sorry. What? Yeah, then Jay Lyon does a lion salt onto the pile in the crowd. Sorry, I was reading my notes wrong. So Erez hits the suicide dive onto CBK and Gringo Loco in the crowd. Then Jay Lyon follows with a lion salt onto the pile. Back inside the ring, Lyon would go for a springboard cutter on Raheem Royal, but Raheem pulls Midas Black into his path. Jay Lyon hits Midas Black. Armani is in. He hits Lyon with the belt. Then they lift Lyon up for their finisher and take home the victory. Nefarious tactics, keeping those belts on the Cold-Blooded Killers, but they are guys I am going to watch. These dudes are good. We had a women's match come up next. Blair Onyx, who I've not seen much of, taking on Laney Luck, who I have. Blair Onyx is dressed in all spider gear, and at one point does this sort of modified tarantula, which is a cool visual, to Laney Luck. That doesn't get the submission. Later, Onyx hits a modified side Russian leg sweep for a near fall, then calls for the end. Blair lifts Laney into a fireman, starts an airplane spin, but Laney escapes and hits a stunner, then an enziguri, and then comes off the ropes. But when she does, Blair Onyx sits up like a creepy Undertaker type deal. And as Laney stops and is stunned, Onyx rolls her up. That ends up being just a near fall. But then immediately after, Onyx hits a ripcord back kick. Laney Luck counters with a stunner. But Blair Onyx, instead of falling backwards onto her back, she arches backwards like Bray Wyatt from the corner, like a spider or whatever that is. And then she rises back up to her feet from the bridge. Another cool visual. And she hits the Uranagi on a stunned Laney Luck and takes home the win. Laney Luck is great. She's a pro in the ring. She's awesome. But Blair Onyx is somebody now I want to see some more of. I like the presentation. I like the gimmick. And I tell you what, taking that stunner and arching onto your it's hard to explain, but it was just so very cool. Next up, we had a cruiserweight 7-way match. It was supposed to be a 6-way match. Darren Richardson, the cruiserweight champion, defending against Ben Root, Jay Bougie, Oni King, and Rochi Roach. Rochi Roach comes to the ring, gets on the mic. He says the janitors need to come out and bring mops because all of the sweat dripping off the greatest body around. Ugh. I tell you what, that certainly got the heat. But what popped the crowd was moments later when the 6th mystery opponent for this 6-way match was announced, that it was Davey Bang and August Matthews, turning it into a 7-way match. Jay Bougie is unimpressed. He takes the mics, taunts them in the ring a little bit, then attacks them with the mic, starting what is a 7-way melee. Towards the end of the match, Bang and Matthews go try to hit the Spears Tower, but Jay Bougie reverses into a cutter, then a Canadian Destroyer on Matthews, using Davey Bang's back to step up onto. However, Darren Richardson sneaks in after the Canadian Destroyer, pushes Bang and Bougie out of the ring, covers August Matthews, and sneaks away with the HOG Cruiserweight Championship. Next up, Charles Mason and Amazing Red. Mason has been chasing the HOG Championship for a while. At the last show, they made a point to talk about the fact that Mason had wanted a title shot at the last show, but it was Amazing Red who stopped that and turned it into a six-man. We will get to that in a minute. The Cold-Blooded Killers are on the outside of this match, helping Mason the entire time. It's basically a 3-on-1. CBK would distract the refs. Mason would pounce. On the outside, Mason was destroying Red around the ring until Amazing Red threw him over the guardrail. Later, Red would climb to the top rope back in the ring, but CBK again got involved and tried to knock him down. Red knocks them down and still hits the flatliner for a near fall, but only because Raheem Royal, having just been knocked off the apron, still had the presence of mind to put Charles Mason's foot on the bottom rope to stop the count at 2. At that point, though, the ref realizes CBK has to go and ejects them from ringside to a furious pop. Charles Mason tries to sneak up from behind in the commotion with the fishhook, but the Amazing Red ducks. Mason spills outside, and Red hits a tope suicida on Charles Mason into the second row. Back in the ring at the end, Mason would spit in Amazing Red's face. Red took it as a badge of honor, wiped it off his face, then licked his hand and went to smack Mason with it. But this led to a flurry of reversals that ended when Red hit the code red for a near fall. Frustrated that had just happened and not won the match, Amazing Red climbs to the top, but Mason catches him, reverses into, well, there were a couple of reverses. There was a Cazadora, and then suddenly Mason has Red locked in a sleeper. Red backs into the corner to try to loosen the grip. That works for a moment, but Mason locks it back in. Red grabbed the ropes back in, but Mason locked him back in. The third time, Mason let go of the hold. Darren Richardson comes in from the crowd, spits in Amazing Red's face while Mason was distracting the ref. Red turned around into a sleeper suplex, then was locked into the sleeper from Mason until he finally did fall asleep, and the referee called the match. I don't know. This clearly can't be over between Mason and Red, and how it affects the world title picture and all sorts of stuff. I don't know where this is going to go, but this is clearly a feud that's not over. The next match was supposed to be Matt Cardona taking on Zilla Fatu, but Zilla Fatu could not make it for whatever reason. Cardona, of course, comes down to the ring. He's pompous. He says, Zilla's not here, and he taunts them for not being able to see Zilla. And he says everything about Chicago sucks. The traffic, the pizza, even this venue and House of Glory suck. I'm out of here. He starts to take off. Of course, the music plays. Who is it? It's Mustafa Ali. Awesome. Ali and Cardona, let's go. Early in this match, the action spilled outside where Ali took control and then asked fans for their help. He held one fan. Actually, he asked one fan to hold Cardona while Ali chopped him. He held Cardona while another kid punched him in the face, and everybody started yelling, holy shit," which was awesome. Back in the ring eventually, Cardona would take control after sidestepping and sending Ali crashing into the ring post, injuring his shoulder. Later, Cardona lifts Ali up and over to the floor on a charge, then follows him out to the floor. They battle up to the ramp. Cardona flips off the crowd and looks for a power bomb, but Ali escapes, hits a super kick, then does a dive off of the stage onto Cardona. Awesome. So cool. At the very end of the match, there's an exchange of blows in the center. Ali super kicks Cardona out of the ring, then hits a tope and throws Cardona back in. Ali climbs to the top, misses the 450. Then Cardona counters and hits radio silence, makes the pin, but pulls Ali's head up at 2. Cardona then stands on the second rope over Ali, hitting punches that normally people would count for, but it was Cardona, so everybody didn't count. Probably because he'd been flipping them off all night. Either way, Ali reverses, power bombs Cardona back down to the mat. climbs back to the top, hits the 450, and Mustafa Ali is your winner. Awesome match. The best. I think it was the best match of the night, honestly. Yeah, I'd say it was the best match of the night. Although that tag team match was really good too. The tag team triple threat. Anyway, we're on to the main event. Mike Santana. You all know Santana and Ortiz. LAX. Mike Santana, AEW TNA, is your HOG World Champion, and he would be defending it against Ricky Starks. Now, like I said earlier, the commentators were saying at the last event that Amazing Red and Brian XL had intervened when Mason had demanded a shot at Santana's world title. Instead, they turned it into a six-man involving Mason and CBK versus Amazing Red, Brian XL, and Mike Santana. Here, Santana would take on Ricky Starks with Mason looming. Early on, Santana super kicked Starks out of the ring and then hits a wrecking ball drop kick that leads to a brawl in the crowd. Santana hits a later he would big boot Starks over the barricade, and they would battle through the crowd, through the chairs. At one point, Starks had grabbed a child, like a baby, to use as a weapon. Now, calm down. There's no children were hurt in the making of this movie, right? But he's got this baby and he's holding it over top of the baby over top of Mike Santana, and he's just sort of just gently just dropping baby boots on Santana's back, which popped me. But even the commentators made a point to say that it was turning into something like a street fight at this point. They're brawling all around the venue by the merch tables. I mean, it was an absolute mess. When they finally return to the ring, it goes back and forth. The momentum shifts back and forth between Starks and Santana constantly. As the match started to wind down, Santana and Starks sort of came into the ropes like a double O'Connor roll, but then Santana rolled through into a cutter out of nowhere, hits a near fall. Starks is up, returns fire with a spear off of a whip for a near fall of his own. Starks climbs to the top rope and misses. Santana reverses, counters with a Death Valley driver, a DVD, then a sit-out powerbomb for a near fall. Santana backs into the corner, calls for the spinning lariat, but Starks caught it and reversed it into an STF that seemed really close to getting a submission, but Santana reaches the ropes to force the break. At the very end, Santana would hit the spinning lariat, make the cover, but Charles Mason comes down and pulls the ref out of the ring by his feet at the count of two. With that distraction, CBK and Charles Mason attack. The referee comes to, figures out what's going on, calls for the DQ. Mason wants his shot at Santana. He wants no one else to have his shot at Santana. So what's going to happen at the next HOG show this coming Saturday? It's going to be Charles Mason versus Ricky Starks. Mason can't win one. He cannot get a break. Santana will be at this event. He will be defending the HOG Championship against Kenta. Holy cow, that's going to be awesome. So I'm not sad that Mason's not getting his title shot just yet. Mason may be, but I am not. Kenta and Mike Santana, shut up and take my money. With that said, we will turn to one of our weekly segments here on the Indie Wrestling Experience, and new, where we highlight or congratulate new champions. There are more than 20 this week. New champions who were crowned this weekend in independent wrestling. Let's get to it. And especially, there's a bunch of people this weekend who are Indie Wrestling Experience favorites, either promotions or performers who were involved in title changes. The very first one, Erica Demia. If you've not seen Erica Demia, let me tell you, she is a star in the making. I think she's only like 20 years old. She's got her character figured out. She knows who she is. She's winning championships all over, from intergender promotions to women's belts. It doesn't matter. She is taking over the indie wrestling scene. This past weekend, she became the Hooligan Championship Wrestling women's champion, defeating Shaza McKenzie. So we'll see where that goes from here. I know Erica had been performing in Hooligan Championship Wrestling for a while, and that title was vacant. So we'll see where that goes from there. At Renegade Wrestling Alliance, the Shadow Man Elijah won the regional title in a multi-man match involving Reverend Ron Hunt and Glenn Spector. Congratulations to Shadow Man Elijah. At Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling, Blade Brown finally toppled Doug Delicious to become the Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling Champion. Blade Brown can be seen celebrating this win on social media. Check out Blade with his new title belt. Congratulations to Blade. Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling is very, very close to me. I've wanted to go to a show of theirs for a while. It's just one of those, once it's close by, it just hasn't worked out. I am going to get down there and see a show by them very soon because it's like a couple hours away at tops. Like, it's not very far. At American Warrior Wrestling Alliance this week, there were 3 title changes. Eliza Hayes became the American Warrior Wrestling Alliance Women's Champion in a triple threat against Sassy and Pandemonium. Tecolote became the Global Champion, defeating Johnny Salvi, and Vikram became the American Warrior Wrestling Alliance World Champion, defeating El Lycan. At Northwest Pro Wrestling this weekend, BYP, Bodie Young Prodigy, became the U.S. and Washington State champion in a title unification triple threat match in which BYP was the only one who walked in without a belt. He defeated both Taekwon Bro and JD Mason to become the unified U.S. and Washington State champion. At Mid-American Championship Wrestling, Ray Sanders became the unified Arkansas champion, defeating Kay Toomer. Logan Light won the TNR Championship Wrestling Northeast Arkansas Openweight Championship. That's a mouthful. Logan Light defeats Jackson Palace and Brandon Crew to win that title. At Nickel City Wrestling, we have a new Silver Linings champion as Shadow Jr. defeated Ace Jervis and Tyler Prince and Milliman in a fatal four-way to become the new Silver Linings champion. At Proving Ground, the Trenches defeated No Future to become Proving Ground Tag Team Champions. At the GCW show we were just talking about, I mentioned Matt Tremont became the Extreme/Ultraviolet champion in the 7-way match. Effy became world champion, defeating Mance Warner, but also the Garbage Daddies defeated Violence is Forever to finally win the GCW tag team titles, finally topping Violence is Forever. Those guys are awesome. Violence is Forever. Go check them out. At We Love Wrestling, the vacant tag titles were decided in a triple threat as Twist and Flip defeated Milwaukee Vice and the Dark Match Mafia to win the We Love Wrestling tag titles. At PAL Wrestling, which is one of the ones we cover quite frequently, Jaden, who just recently won the PAL Tag Team Championships, I believe, was it PAL? Maybe it was DOA. Anyway, he's won a set of tag team titles with PAL champion Amira. Jaden wins the Wrestling with Regret YouTube Championship from Levi Shapiro. Side note about Levi Shapiro, which really cracked me up. I had ranked Levi Shapiro at number 13 last month in our intergender overall rankings, since PAL is an intergender promotion. Levi Shapiro saw the tweet and tweeted, "Top 15 indie wrestler, rates are going up," which was awesome. Anyway, so at Limitless Wrestling, we have a new Limitless champion in Channing Thomas, who defeated Desmond Cole. At Pro Wrestling Magic, the Rep, who, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for a chance to get the Rep into my tag team rankings. They're great. Another East Coast tag team you may or may not have seen, but in New Jersey at the Mecca, the Rep defeated Meat Locker, Kerr, and Wrecking Ball Legursky to win the unified Pro Wrestling Magic tag team titles. At PPW in Pennsylvania, their PPW champion VSK was defeated this weekend by Matt Riddle, who just got done winning the MLW championship the week before from Satoshi Kojima at their pay-per-view. Matt Riddle is now your PPW champion, having defeated VSK. At Forever Pro Wrestling, Joe Black became the inaugural Forever Pro champion, winning a ladder match against Kevin Ryan, Terry Yaki, Skrilla the Great, and Chris Crunk. Finally, Brian Idol won the Duke City Championship Wrestling Route 66 title, defeating Mr. Happy this past weekend. Congratulations to all of our new champions this week. Next up, our YouTube recommendation for the week. Now, I had some notes set out for this event, but I just got done running down two very long cards of wrestling and describing them match for match. I never give spoilers in my YouTube recommendation of the week anyway, but I will go out of my way to shorten this, or at least to make it, to not give too much detail because I've already talked plenty. But my YouTube, oh goodness gracious, my YouTube recommendation for the week comes from 880 Wrestling. Now, I had just done a review of 880 Wrestling's Thursday Night Fights. That's every week on the IndieWrestling.us, not related to us, IndieWrestling.us YouTube channel. They have Thursday Night Fights every Thursday night. Their Thursday Night Fights champion is Tatiana, the unwilting Tatiana, another Indie Wrestling Experience favorite. But this show was live streamed on Friday night. It was called the Den of Desires Ball Drop. It is on YouTube. It is free to watch. It's just under 3 hours, and it is definitely worth. Well, it's probably a little bit over 3 hours, but there's intermissions and all sorts of pre-match stuff. So I think there's about 2.5 hours worth of wrestling on there. It's a great show. If you're into the intergender wrestling, it's it's just a really fun show. There's a lot of fun events on it. There's a lot of fun teams and tons of great wrestling, which sometimes with all the showmanship gets lost. But these guys, I mean, everybody at this promotion can go. We start off the night with a New Year's Rumble to crown a number one contender. That is in what I think is like a kickoff show. But it's definitely a lot of fun. It'll introduce you to a bunch of names from 880 Wrestling if you're not already familiar. To really start the show, we had Catfight, Chaz D'Amato, and Keith Haught, who had just reunited on Thursday Night Fights when Chaz D'Amato returned. They take on the Department of Jocks, Avalanche Adams, and Dev Swayze, who are two young guys definitely on the come up. Keep an eye out. Avalanche Adams, Dev Swayze, the Department of Jocks. These guys are very good. In a singles match, Angelo Carter would take on MV Young. Anybody who knows anything about the intergender scene in Pennsylvania, Jersey, and those places, you've seen MV Young. He's everywhere. He's a former Enjoy wrestling champion. So MV Young is going to put on a good show. Next up, Jamie Jamison, who we got done talking about at IWC. I guess the night before, he had been at 880, taking on Brandon St. James. A spur-of-the-moment 6-man tag team match. It's weird. It's like there's people coming down to the ring, Reese Hayes, Tyler Vox, and then next thing you know, Lexa Sin, Aaron Daniel Norman, Uncle Masty shows up, and David Lawless. It's like a promo that turns into a 6-man tag team match, but it's an interesting match. It's a fun match, and David Lawless is great. He's another one too. David Lawless, the lawyer. Of course, that's a gimmick that was always near and dear to my heart as well. But I think David Lawless is just fantastic at the ring as well. So it's a fun match. Fun match, worth watching. The whole event is worth watching. But that sort of comes together on the spot. Next up, we got a 880 hardcore title match. Dio Castro defending against Casey War. Casey War's a guy I've ranked, I think, in some of my rankings, but I hadn't really seen him. I hadn't seen a full Casey War match. This was the first one. I like Casey War, and I think the hardcore matches, for me, the hardcore matches don't translate on TV most of the time like they do live. Hardcore death matches and stuff live it's just an experience like no other. But this match translated on TV. I thought they put on a good match. Dio Castro is another one to keep your eye on. Another mainstay of Pennsylvania and intergender wrestling, the Runway, Calvin Couture and Tyler Klein. They take on the Den of Desire, Blizzy Blake and Marco Narciso for the 880 Tag Team Championships. The Runway are in our top 5 of overall tag teams. They've been around for a while, and I think they're coming up with a shot at another set of belts this weekend. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Speaking of Tatiana, the unwilting Tatiana, she was here defending the 880 Thursday Night Fights title match against Paris Zahara. This is another fun match. Doesn't go too long, but worth the watch. The full queer tag team championships are defended by the Creeps, Andy Ripley and Irving West, against the Move Makers, Gigi Jacobs and Landon Sanders. And in the 880 title match, Gianni Michael Enrico, who is also your number one contender to the Enjoy Championship, takes on Andrew Palace, who we just got done mentioning. We know the night after this event, he's going to get beat down by Bill Collier. Maybe that's because he just wrestled this awesome match against Gianni Enrico and wasn't planning to wrestle in the title match on Saturday night. So they did him a favor. I don't know. But there's something up with that. Palace performs at this show, has a great match with Enrico that you guys are all going to go watch on YouTube. And then he shows up at IWC and does a favor by stepping into the main event. I really feel like that's how it went down. Somebody from IWC is listening. Call in or message me on social. Tell me I'm wrong. Maybe I am. Who knows what I know. All right, finally, we're here, the last segment of the week. As usual, I want to highlight some shows that are coming for you this week before we get out of here, starting with Thursday night at the Houston Premier Arena, New Texas Pro Wrestling, who are included in our indie wrestling rankings. I am getting very familiar with New Texas Pro. This is the Texas Contenders Series, which will take place on Thursday night. We have a brand new Texas Contender Series champion in Jay Davis, but he will be involved in a six-man match as the eighth day will take on Jay Davis, Killa Cash, and Teflon John. Izzy James will issue a Lone Star Championship Open Challenge. And we have Toxic Tour taking on Divinium in a first round all-for-one, one-for-all, number one tag team tournament contenders match. On Friday, SWA Wrestling is holding Snow Brawl at the NYWC Sportatorium in Deer Park, New York, highlighted by a 30-wrestler Snowball Rumble. I guess it's that time of year. Everybody's doing the Rumbles. Johnny Malloy will take on Ox Security in a last man standing Pride Heavyweight Championship match. And Satanta Fury will defend the Adrenaline Championship against A1G. At Rival Showdown Pro Wrestling, also on Friday, the Shape of Wrestling to Come will be highlighted by Cole Radrick defending the Omni Championship against Josh Crane. Maggie Lee and Marty Bell versus Ashlyn Alexander and Rachel Armstrong in a tag team match. Woo, that's loaded with talent there. Trey Lamar will be taking on Kevin Koo of Violence is Forever. And Jack Vaughn will be taking on Matt Cross. M-Dog, Matt Cross. Action Wrestling on Friday will also be holding an event called We Back Up from the Line Creek Brewing Company. The Good Hand will defend the Action Tag Team titles against Totally Shook, and Tim Bosby will defend the Action title against Rob Killjoy. In Saviorville, Tennessee, I hope I pronounced that right, Saviorville, Tennessee, at the Saviorville Civic Center, Crossfire Wrestling's who is associated with the NWA, will be holding their 20 Years of Kick-Ass show. NWA talent appearing on the show as the Country Gentleman will take on Connor Martin and Paradox. Tyler Franks will battle Evil Nate, and Jeremiah Plunkett and will take on JAC Jack in a Hoss match for the NWA Mid-America Championship. On Saturday, our buddy, the Rich Buckholz and Raging Pro Wrestling, as we've talked about over the past few weeks, will be holding Redemption 4. Check out their website, RPW Pro Wrestling, and their social media for more details. Redemption 4 takes place at Big Apple Pub and Grill in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Stacy Shadows from Ring of Honor will take on Casey Lennox for the RPW Women's Championship. Missa Kate will battle Lily Ruiz. Parker Boudreaux will take on Garrison Creed. And the main event will see JDX, Money Miguel, and Rampage Santana taking on RPW champion Brick McCarthy and Danhausen. Meet and greets available at that show. If you've not gotten your tickets, if you've not bought your meet and greet, do so now. I think Rich said last week, Danhausen has a limit of the meet and greets or the signings he's going to do. So you do not want to miss that opportunity. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the site of WrestleCade at the Benton Convention Center, AML Wrestling, who has events at WrestleCade every year. If you've been to a WrestleCade, they hold the Sunday show. AML Wrestling is putting on the Act of War Games. Psycho Boy Fodder will take on Rayan Intius. ODB will take on Clara Carter. And the Dawsons will defend the tag titles against George South and Billy Gunn, Money Inc., and the Andersons in a fatal four-way. At Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling, in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling will be holding Sigma Vendetta at the Campbell Park Rec Center. Unnatural Causes will defend the tag titles against Sons of Liberty. Corey Dillinger will take on Kyle Blizzard in a Hoss match. And Sage Scott will defend the heavyweight championship against Leroy Shogun. The Wrestling Theology Fellowship will be holding Redemption also in Anderson, Indiana at Mercy Road Church. Eric Surge will take on Drew Skills. Chuckles and Mr. Fitness will defend the tag titles against Jacob Rose and Ryan Michaels. Anthony Toatel will defend the United States title against Juwan Thomas. And Noelle Summit will defend the women's championship against Ari Alexander. Ari Alexander's another one I've seen a few times. She's great. Check her out too. Championship International Wrestling. One day I'm going to bring my daughter on this podcast and tell you the most ridiculous story about trying to attend a Championship International Wrestling show. But I am going to save that and let her tell it, or let her help me tell it, because I think she's an integral part of that story. But Championship International Wrestling will be holding Danger Rising at Waldron Area Schools in Waldron, Michigan. The Sandman from ECW will be making an appearance. Ashton Adonis will take on the Great Tiger, and Wildcat Marissa Shaw will defend the women's championship against Steffi Mack. At Pro Wrestling 225 on Saturday, they will be presenting Homecoming from the Copac Gym in Plaquemine, Louisiana. Someone's got to tell me how to pronounce that. Either way, headlined by Vladimir Koloff defending the World Championship against Sam Stackhouse. The Russell Twins defending the Tag Team Championships against Fly Def. And Fuego del Sol taking on Lucha Locura. That match is going to be fire. MCW Pro Wrestling is holding their Winter Blast in Hollywood, Maryland. 10 minutes, not even 10, I think it's 8 minutes from my house this weekend. I am probably going to be there, but I'm not committing just yet. If I am there, there will be pictures, reviews, results, and we will talk about it on this show next week. Either way, that takes place from the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department in Hollywood, Maryland, headlined by DeMarcus Kane and the Hype taking on new MCW Pro Wrestling Champion Joseph Keys and the Hustlers, with Devon Dudley as special guest referee. Also on that show, Gia Scott defends the Women's Championship against Simone Valentina. The aforementioned Spencer Slade will take on the former Velveteen Dream, Patrick Clark. And Chris Slade will take on James Ellsworth. In Chicago, Illinois, Second Wrestling will be holding Thriller in the Miller 2 from the St. Demetrius Church. Sean Logan will defend the Maxwell Street Heritage title against Dustin Jackson. Blair Onyx will battle Rachel Armstrong. David Ali will issue an open challenge for the Second Wrestling Championship. David Ali, congratulations to his recent marriage to Heather Monroe. I don't know how recent it was. Things run together for me. It may not have been all that recent, but I know David Ali was just posting wedding photos this past weekend. That's why it's top of mind. Go out, check out those wedding photos. It's always cool to see a wrestling wedding that doesn't end in a brawl. Congrats to the two of them for real. Anyway, Heather Monroe is also on this Second Wrestling show. She will be taking on Kylie Ray, another WWE ID prospect. Also on Saturday, Bayou Independent Wrestling presents The Chase is On from the Gym Center in Fountain Hill, Arkansas. Eddie Martinez will take on Barrett Brown for the Deep South Heritage Championship. Braxton Hunter will take on Alex Arsenal. And Victoria Mosh will battle Cassandra Golden for the Women's Championship. In Murrieta, California, West Coast Wrestling Company presents Conflict Resolution from Solaris Beer and Blending in Murrieta. Damian Grundy will take on Vita Fratelli for the WCWC Championship. Jamison Stafford will defend the Wild Card Championship against Blake Grayson in a no DQ match. And American Punk will take on Michael Badwolf. Finally, on Sunday, we have one show to highlight. That is Pro Wrestling Action will present Light Speed Ahead. Check out their social media for more information. The Voltage title will be on the line as Blake Banks battles champion Nick Turner. Ray Fury will defend the All-Star Championship against Brian Brock. Lexi Gomez, Dean Taylor, and Island Girl TT will battle in a Lexi Gomez and Island Girl TT will battle in a Marvel's Championship match. And Erica Demia and Mikey Spandex will team up in an intergender match to take on Cam Stewart and Mila Moore. So that's going to be a loaded card as well. But that wraps up all of the action for this coming weekend. Get out, see some independent wrestling this weekend. I guarantee you there is some near you. I've just gone over several shows that could be in your area. If not, reach out to us at Indie Wrestling XP on Twitter, on Facebook. Ask us where you can find a show this weekend in your area. We know all the areas. We know all the shows. Check us out. Ask us. We are dying at Indie Wrestling Experience. We're dying to help you connect with independent wrestling because it is so worth it. Every week I am on here talking about independent wrestling to try to help connect people with it. It is so much fun. And sometimes it's better than going to a big show with all the big talent. There's so many aspects of independent wrestling that's better than going to a WWE show or even an AEW show. There's just so many advantages to it. And the matches are usually often just as good. Sometimes better. Sometimes a lot better, actually. So get out, check out independent wrestling. I just outlined some shows for you, but go find some stuff near you. I am going to keep tabs with Rich Buckholtz. He is going to be back on the show next week to talk RPW Redemption 4, the aftermath, and a preview for us where Homecoming is going to go in May in the aftermath of the matches that take place at RPW Redemption. I will likely be at MCW this weekend. If you are going to MCW this weekend, come check me out. I will be wearing the Flip Gordon hat. It just says Flip in capital letters on the top. Come find me, say hello. Otherwise, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope my voice alone for an entire hour and however long this has been wasn't too boring. Next week, I will have Rich Buckholtz back, and I am hoping to have my co-host ready to go. We will see if that's true, but Rich will definitely be here. We will be talking Redemption. I will be talking MCW, Winter Blast, and much, much more. Don't forget to check us out on social, Indie Wrestling XP on Twitter and on Blue Sky, Indie Wrestling Experience on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram. We are on Smug Mug. There are so many photos on Smug Mug. That's one thing I didn't tell you guys about in the other episodes that I wanted to make sure you know about. Check out the Indie Wrestling Experience link tree. That's the easiest way. I'm not just going to read the link off here, but check out the Indie Wrestling Experience link tree, and there's a link to the Smug Mug. Guys, it's got to be. I mean, it's got to be tens of thousands of photos by now. I take 1,000 almost at every event because I'm insane. But there's so many photos on there. Use them, download them, meme them. I'd love to see that. That'd be awesome. I don't care, but there's a ton of content there for all of you, which you can farm, which you can use. It's free to download any of those photos. Go check those out. But check us out everywhere else you can find us. Follow this podcast, like this podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, whatever else you got to do on YouTube nowadays to stay in the loop. And we will see you next week.